Hello, I'm Michelle Powers, and you are watching a special edition of Currents News. The country's so-called safest big city, now a shooting ground. Gunfire intensifying in New York City, as does the debate over policing. But what's the church's role in curbing gun violence? And a woman defaced 3 Black Lives Matter murals. But she says you have to hear her side of the story. New York City Hall protesters cleared out. We take a look at what was left behind. And attacks on the Catholic Church continue. Why is the faith being targeted, and where's the outrage? Plus, picture day for thousands. Why these unemployed New Yorkers hope headshots give them the head start they need. That's next on Currents News Special Edition. The coronavirus crisis might be settling down in New York City, but gun violence is exploding. Church leaders in the Diocese of Brooklyn are looking at the surge as a pro-life issue that needs immediate action. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has that story from Bedford-Stuyvesant.
This year, there have been more than 600 shootings in the streets of New York, crime the city hasn't seen since the 1980s.
When you start to react with evil to evil, then you're only going to bring things down.
Father Frank Black ministers in the epicenter, Brooklyn. His parish neighborhood, Crown Heights, has seen nearly a dozen shootings just this month. It's a home he hardly recognizes, one that takes him back to the bad old days.
Breaking into people's businesses, shooting other people for whatever reason, drive-by shootings, that's not pro-life.
Violence fundamentally at odds with church teaching. To be pro-life is to respect all stages of life from conception to natural death, something he says is not happening in New York right now. In July alone, 239 shooting incidents have been reported, a 210% increase from last year. The shooting surge comes as the NYPD disbanded its anti-crime unit, a plainclothes group of officers that worked to keep illegal guns off the streets, but had a large percentage of complaints. Another area hit by gun violence, Bedford-Stuyvesant.
The violence in our community has to come to an end, especially for our young people.
Father Alonzo Cox, the pastor of St. Martin de Porres, says the church needs to focus on young people if it ever wants to help curb the violence and fulfill its role in the community.
We need to set an example for our youth and bring them together and to show them that we need to live in peace and harmony.
Father Cox has been holding virtual forums for the youth of his parish, allowing them to express their frustrations as well as their hopes for the future of their city.
Trying our best through, the gift of social media is to reach out to our youth. Our young people want to see peace. They want an end to this violence.
At a time when a swirl of violence is moving rapidly through the city, pastors say the power of prayer and peace can be much stronger. In Bedford-Stuyvesant, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
The NYPD is shaking things up to confront that spike in shootings. Headquarters is reassigning about 200 police officers by scrapping 2 key units. One handled enforcement of moving traffic cases, and the other took care of homeless outreach. The officers are being sent to neighborhood precincts to help curb gun violence. The changes are coming after the plainclothes anti-crime unit was disbanded last month. Those 600 cops were responsible for cracking down on illegal guns. A woman who says she supports the police was arrested this week after vandalizing the Black Lives Matter mural in Manhattan. But that didn't stop her from striking different murals again and again. Currents News' Christine Persichetti has her story and her hopes to start a movement that, quotes, rises up and takes back the country.
Look at my hands.
This is Bevelyn Beatty's latest video on her YouTube page, which has been viewed more than 83,000 times, talking about her weekend.
Black people, right? Black Lives Matter.
It all started on Saturday. Bevelyn and others spilling black paint, then smearing it all over the Black Lives Matter mural outside of Trump Tower. She was eventually arrested, but hours later, she reemerged in Harlem.
Before anything else can matter.
What's wrong with you?
Jesus has to
But
matter.
what's wrong with you? You're a black
Jesus
woman.
has to matter.
As witnesses yelled at her, Bevelyn spilled paint over the mural there while sitting in the trunk of a car.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, we in Brooklyn, and it ain't over. Jesus matters.
Then it was on to Brooklyn. Same plan, different location. According to her bio on social media, Bevelyn Beatty is co-founder and evangelist of At the Well Ministries. Instead of Black Lives Matter, she uses the hashtag Jesus Matters.
Black Lives Matter does not speak about the black cop that dies. Black Lives Matter doesn't speak about the black man that dies due to black-on-black crime. Black Lives Matter does not address the black baby in the womb that's murdered.
And she supports police and the work they do and opposes moves to defund police departments.
We were the voice that they couldn't have. We were the stand that they couldn't take.
While there were people opposing her as she painted over the murals, Bevelyn certainly has her supporters, as you can see from the thousands of comments on her videos.
A lot of people thought I was being a hero by doing what I did, but I wasn't being a hero. I was being an American. I was being an American. But more than that, I was being a Christian. This is what Christians do. We turn tables.
And she says she's not done turning tables or painting streets.
God is good.
Yes, Lord.
It was victorious, you guys. And we're going to keep going.
Christine Persichetti, Currents News.
Protesters are no longer occupying City Hall Park. Early Wednesday morning, police cleared out the park where protesters have been camped out for weeks and started cleaning up what they left behind. Currents News' Christine Persichetti has the story.
City sanitation workers spent the day cleaning up City Hall Park, removing the anti-police graffiti that's covered the sidewalks since protesters set up camp in the park some 3 weeks ago. Those protesters have also been cleared out.
We are horrified at what we see here.
Taylor Banning didn't camp here, but did join the protests. She called it disturbing that the NYPD showed up at 3 a.m. and forced the protesters to leave.
This is a disrespect to Black lives. This is disrespect to the movement, to every single person who's been out here showing love, showing protest, showing freedom to assemble.
The so-called Occupy City Hall protesters assembled here, calling for the police to be defunded. But Mayor Bill de Blasio says over the last few weeks, the gathering got smaller with fewer protesters and more homeless people.
We do always respect the right to protest, but we have to think about health and safety first, and the health and safety issues were growing. So it was time to take action.
The mayor was asked about the slow response in removing the anti-police graffiti here, but quick response to cleaning up the vandalized Black Lives Matter murals.
Each situation, though, is different, and this was a particularly complex situation down here. Look, I made very clear that graffiti on those public buildings in this area is being cleaned up right now as we speak. It's not acceptable. It will be gone.
Police Commissioner Dermot Shea says he couldn't be happier with how his cops responded overnight, with no injuries and no real use of force.
A number of individuals did not want to leave. The result was one arrest for attempted assault where a brick was thrown at an officer. Luckily, that officer had a shield. It left a dent, I'm told, in the shield, but nobody was injured.
Christine Persichetti, Currents News.
At the same time the NYPD cleared protesters out of City Hall, Democrats in the House voted to kick Confederate statues out of the U.S. Capitol. Throughout the building, there are dozens honoring the likes of General Robert E. Lee and Confederate President Jefferson Davis. The House Majority Leader says that goes against the idea that Black lives do matter.
So when we assert that, yes, they do matter, it is out of conviction and conscience and appropriateness that in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, that the land of the free include all of us. These statues must be relegated to the dark places of a shameful stain on our history.
Some Republicans are pushing back against congressional action, saying it should be left up to the individual states. Speaking of statues, the one of Christopher Columbus that was knocked down and thrown into Baltimore's harbor is going to be replaced. The Knights of Columbus are leading the drive to replace the smashed icon with a new marble monument. President Ronald Reagan, standing alongside then Archbishop William Borders, dedicated the original statue in 1984. The Columbus Memorial is one of dozens of historical monuments that have been toppled or vandalized across the country recently. And the New York chapter of Planned Parenthood is also making some changes. It's removing the name of founder Margaret Sanger from its New York City clinic because of what it calls her harmful connection to the eugenics movement. That movement was meant to promote selective breeding and often targeted people of color and the disabled. When we get back, attacks on the church in America. While one vandalized statue is rededicated, another is desecrated again, and another beheaded. Many asking, where is the outrage and the media coverage? A statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary in Queens is now spotless after a vandal defaced the monument last week. Even though the statue is pristine once more, Currents News' Emily Druby tells us police may never find the suspect and they could strike again.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and
A special moment outside of Cathedral Preparatory School and Seminary.
know her protection and trace in their hearts
A prayer service and rededication of this 100-year-old statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, now restored after it was desecrated by spray paint almost a week ago.
Well, we pass it every morning, and Mary's, our mother, and she's our guidance sometimes, well, pretty much all of the time. She guides us, to do good and to better ourselves.
The rededication done on the feast day of Our Lady of Mount Carmel.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray.
Prep students, teachers, and staff put summer break on hold to pray outdoors at the school in Elmhurst, Queens.
Although I was upset, I knew that something good will always come out of evil. I know that Father Crowley was going to do something. They would be cleaned eventually.
Father James Caroli, the school's rector and president, says he's grateful to Catholic Cemeteries, the group responsible for quickly cleaning and restoring the Blessed Mother's monument. Last Friday, the statue was vandalized, the word idol written in thick black spray paint down the front. The incident is being investigated by the NYPD as criminal mischief. Police are still searching for this individual, completely covered in clothes and wearing a hat. They have not been able to determine if it's a man or a woman.
Suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried.
But Thursday wasn't about anger towards the suspect. Instead, it was a celebration of the school's resilience and their faith.
What a beautiful sight it is that we're able to have a day where we're able to stand and seek her intercession with the students of Cathedral, with the faculty, and with members of the Elmhurst community to really show that our faith and our love does not waver, that it only gets stronger.
Emily Druby, Currents News.
And that's not the only statue of Mary targeted this week. Attacks actually scale the eastern seaboard. In Massachusetts, for the second time, a statue of the Virgin Mary outside of a Dorchester church has been desecrated. This time, a garbage can was dumped onto the top of the statue. Earlier this month, another statue at a nearby parish was burned. The Boston Fire Department says someone set fire to the plastic flowers in Mary's hands, causing the face and the upper body of the statue to be burned. Then across the ocean, French investigators are nearly certain a historic cathedral was deliberately set on fire. They haven't made an official declaration yet or arrested a suspect, but the blaze, being called a violent fire, started in 3 different places inside the Cathedral of St. Peter and St. Paul in the city of Nantes. Here to talk more about the attacks is Neil COSGROVE from the Ancient Order of the Hibernians, the oldest and largest Irish Catholic organization in the United States. Christine Persichetti asked him why he thinks the church is seeing this slew of attacks.
That's a question for the ages. I mean, I don't see what the church, which basically preaches tolerance, preaches a sharing of blessings, teaches to love all humanity the same, is being attacked. I think that this is just pent up anger, and unfortunately, I think the church is coming in as collateral damage on this situation.
Yeah, you know, protesters have been destroying statues because of what they perceive as their negative history, tearing down figures of Columbus or St. Junipero Serra because of their treatment of indigenous people. But these are monuments to Jesus and Mary. Why such hate towards them?
It makes you wonder. I can only think that it's somehow or another it's perception of being the establishment. These people who are talking and preaching about tolerance obviously do not know their own history. I mean, Saint Sierra actually was an advocate for Native Americans. You know, in his time, he would have been a progressive. He would have been on, you know, the far cutting edge of human rights in his era. I don't know where these people have learned their history, but certainly Catholics have, and especially Irish Catholics, have known intimidation and in violence throughout their history. Within living memory, we had to question whether a Catholic could be a president because there was fears that he would have dual allegiance between America and his faith. And sadly, even today in Congress, we hear people bringing those charges against some government appointees.
Now, the AOH has criticized news outlets for their lack of coverage on the destruction of Catholic statues. Why do you think this isn't being reported?
I think there is, for some strange reason, there is a hierarchy of outrage. For some reason, we've seen this before when, Catholic items are vandalized. Far too frequently, we see it swept away as criminal mischief, whereas the exact same act against another faith, quite rightly, is targeted as a hate crime. And I think there is this loss that there has been a long history of animosity and hatred to Catholics throughout our nation's history. And I think, and I don't think it's ever gone completely away, but people have forgotten. I think it's very sad.
That was Neil Cosgrove from the Ancient Order of the Hibernians. Still to come. Picture day for thousands. Why headshots could give some a head start. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back with you. As millions of people continue to file for unemployment every week, a local photographer is using his God-given talents for the greater good. He's hoping free headshots give everyone a head start in the job market. Current News' Jessica Easthope has that story from Midtown Manhattan.
Smile. Perfect.
The pandemic has left an estimated 1.5 million New Yorkers out of a job.
You should be a model instead of a producer.
But some feel they're still not out of that big city luck, that maybe these headshots could give them the head start they need to get back to business.
We don't only uplift their chances and their hopes for employment, but also the spirit that they lost during the pandemic. Okay, very good. You're doing great.
MATIBAG was working hard Wednesday, taking professional headshots with the 10,000 Headshot Initiative.
Chin up just a tiny bit.
200 photographers in locations across the country taking headshots free of charge to help people gain a job.
I love your eyes.
And some self-esteem.
So this is a great idea to actually give back, especially among us photographers who has also been there. Chin down a bit.
MATIBAG knows the feeling well of being lost and sometimes having to reinvent yourself.
Beautiful.
He was once in the seminary preparing to be a Catholic priest. Now he's fighting on the front lines of the pandemic as a nurse. And photography is his passion.
That's one right there.
This month, New York City's unemployment rate rose to more than 20%, and nationwide, around 11% of people are out of work. This quick click can be costly. Headshots average $400 to $500, making this opportunity a godsend for people like Persephone Anastasopoulos, an architect who was laid off.
Definitely having a professional photo makes a world of difference in terms of the presentation you put forth.
According to LinkedIn, people who have a professional headshot on their profiles get 21 times more views and 9 times as many connection requests as those who don't. But some who came down Wednesday worry their jobs won't exist after the crisis ends. Carmen Corzo is an event planner, and she thinks the industry may never fully recover.
I think a lot of us are going to have to venture out to different fields and find completely different jobs. So that's why I'm like grateful that like I had this opportunity to get a photo and just be able to update my resume.
The goal is 10,000 headshots in one day. But what Rom and the other photographers are really hoping to accomplish is a boost in confidence.
Okay, you're doing great.
In Manhattan, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Finally tonight, we're going on a virtual trip. Melissa BUTZ, our Vatican correspondent, is taking all of us on it since European vacations have been canceled for the time being. We are about to roam around the Eternal City. For the next couple of weeks, Melissa won't show us everything we are missing, but everything we have to look forward to the next time we get to escape to Italy. First up, Piazza Navona.
Welcome to Rome. Today we're touring Piazza Navona, a favorite of both sightseers and city dwellers alike. These cobblestone streets are normally full of artists, musicians, and tourists, but before the 15th century they had a very different use.
Since the 1st century, this square was a center for trading and bartering, a circus and sports venue dedicated to the Emperor Domitian that could hold 30,000 spectators. Yet there was also a much darker side to this iconic piazza.
During this time, it was also the place of persecution of the Christians. So if you can imagine, so many martyrs shed their blood and consecrated this ground right here. It's right here where St. Agnes would have also been one of the many saints who was martyred for the faith.
In fact, her sacrifice is honored with a church dedicated to her, St. Agnes. It houses a relic of her skull. The stairs leading up to it are strategically placed to avoid water damage when Pope Innocent X's sister-in-law would flood the square.
If you can imagine, with end of 17th century technology, managed to flood this entire piazza, about 3.5 feet, in order to recreate naval battle scene.
Today, Piazza Navona's main attraction is the obelisk and the Fountain of the Four Rivers, commissioned by Pope Innocent X in 1650.
People couldn't even imagine that this beautiful fountain could actually support the weight of this amazing obelisk that actually is not from here, comes all the way from Egypt and goes back to about 1500 BC approximately. And so it's called a silent witness because this would have witnessed the Israelites before and during the Exodus.
Once in Rome, the obelisk bore witness to the martyrdom of Christians, the raising of the level of the entire square by 70 feet at the end of the 19th century, and the onslaught of millions of tourists that normally fill Piazza Navona today.
In Piazza Navona, artists and musicians interact with tourists all the time, giving this square a friendly yet traditional Italian feel. It's the perfect place to take a passeggiata or a stroll throughout the city so you can get a taste of Rome's great culture and history. In Rome, Melissa BUTZ, Currents News.
And that is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Be sure to join Christine Persichetti every weeknight at 7. You have a great weekend.